Hi, my name is Steve Mazza with Integral Consulting Services, and I want to talk a little bit about how Ivanti Asset Manager can be used for tracking and managing software titles. So, what we see here is the dashboard. When you first log into the system, you're brought to the dashboard. I'm logged into the system as an asset administrator. There's a default dashboard for each role in the system. The system comes with multiple roles, multiple dashboards, and each dashboard is made up of multiple panels. So in this case, we can see there's 6 panels that make up this dashboard. The system comes with maybe 70 or so individual pre-configured dashboards, and the system is very extensible. So you can modify those dashboards, you can modify the individual panels, and you can add additional panels, you can add additional dashboards. And in fact, the two dashboards that I showed at the bottom, I'll look at those a little bit later. I added those to this home dashboard. Those two panels at the bottom, I added to this dashboard. And those additions are done without programming, just through a point and click interface. So this is the dashboard. The dashboard is live information. You can drill into it. So for instance, if I click on this little piece of the pie, it says Adobe, and there were 9 items there. So it's going to take me specifically into the software workspace, but focused on those 9 items that made up that piece of the pie that I clicked on. So here's the Adobe titles in the system. So how did these titles get into the system? They can come in primarily from 2 different ways. One is through discovery, and in this case I have discovery hooked up to Ivanti Neurons. Ivanti Neurons itself can receive in information from multiple sources, things like SCCM, Active Directory, Ivanti's own endpoint manager. There's an Intel tracker tool. There's multiple things that can feed into neurons, and one of the things that neurons can do with discovery is normalize and rationalize that information. So it'll get rid of like duplicate names, and if 2 pieces of equipment are reported with different names, but it's the same piece of equipment based on its IP address and other identifying information, those two records will get merged, so it reconciles data as well as normalizing data. So that's the primary source for information in this copy of Asset Manager that we're looking at. The other source is through procurement. So let's go look at contracts, because through procurement we can establish entitlements to software. So here I'm going to look at the Microsoft contract, and so there's some header information here about the contract, and then there are individual line items related to that sort of that Microsoft relationship. So there's an NDA here, and then there's entitlements for specific software titles. So here's one for Microsoft SQL Server 2008. If I double click on that, I get some additional details about it. That's kind of like a quick highlight details. If I click Go To, it's going to take me into that specific entitlement record, and I'll see all of the information about it instead of just that little highlight that we saw. And so we can see a lot of fields are available for tracking software based on this entitlement. You can have renewal information tracked in here, any kind of termination details. You can actually have snippets of the contract language, or you can have the entire contract in here as readable text, or you can have it as an attachment. So like here, we've got just the terms of use. And then we can also see a list of assets where that entitlement has been applied. So here's a list of, in this case, servers, where SQL Server 2008 has been applied as an entitlement. So that's the other way that software can get into the system, either through procurement that we just looked at, or through discovery that I had talked about earlier. So now I want to go back to the dashboard. I'm going to close out some of these things and talk about these panels. Out of the box, this software product dashboard has these 4 panels. I added these 2 panels at the bottom, again without programming, through a point-and-click interface. And these 2 panels talk about or help manage product at the end of its life cycle. So here is a listing of all the software that we know of in our system that has 0 installations. So let me click on one of these and dive into it, and that might make more sense. So I clicked on Photoshop 7, and we can see some information about it. We could see, whether it's a suite or whatever. And we can see that there's currently 0 installations of this title. But we can also see a list of historical installations. This means this is a list of equipment where this title had previously been installed, had previously been discovered, but it's no longer there. So this list here is something I added. So as installations get discovered, it populates this tab here, and then I added it's automatic, so that as it gets discovered, it also adds it into this historical installations. So this is a more durable record of where the installations have, or what systems it has been installed on. And I believe that's necessary for an audit. And this installations tab is more what's happening in the environment right now. So this is more up to date. This is showing right now there's 0 installations. Okay, so we got here. That was kind of an explanation of this panel of the dashboard. That's scrollable. So there's a long list here of software that has 0 installations. And I also added this panel over here. When we were looking, let me dive into one of these in a second. This is a list of software that has been discovered in the environment, but is on a prohibited list. So let's go look at that. I'm going to click on one of these. In this case, this is Windows Professional 8, and it's currently, the installations tab shows that it's currently installed on 5 computers. But if we go back on the details, we can see this use policy. And so this is what's driving representation in that panel that I had shown. So there's a use policy that you can associate with a software title. In this case, I have it listed as prohibited. And when we were looking at that panel in the dashboard, it's really nothing but just a search of give me a listing of all of the titles that have installations greater than 0 and prohibited software. So if I were to, well, let me just do that. If I were to make this no longer prohibited, it won't show up on that list. So this Windows Professional 8 is no longer prohibited. And if I go, so it's no longer in this list of prohibited. And if I go back to the dashboard and refresh it, well, I was too slow. If I had gotten here faster, it might have been listed, and then if I refresh, it'll disappear. So it auto refreshes. You can set auto refresh to happen like every 5 minutes or so, or when it paints the dashboard panel. So now we can see that that software that had previously been prohibited, it's no longer prohibited, so it doesn't show up on this list. And what we can do also is we could run a process like every night to look for any of these prohibited installations and send an email or notify somebody in some other way to make somebody aware of those prohibited installations. So that covers what I wanted to show today, and I hope that answers any questions you may have had. Thank you.